Hey everyone, it's Haley, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I hope to read by the end of the year. I've said this a million times before, but my reading year kind of ends in November. Really, it ends in October because I start filming in November, but these are just some books that I want to read before the end of 2020, so I'm not going to overcomplicate things and explain that. I have a good mix of books here. Basically, I just went to my bookshelves and I was like, what do I want to read soon? What do I want to read by the end of 2020? And this is the result. It's a lot of nonsense, a lot of randomness, but I'm definitely really excited for these books and really hoping to get to them too. Obviously, there might be some overlap with the November TBR that I will be doing soon when this video comes out. I can't exactly remember when it's coming out, but I've been doing quite a few TBR videos recently, I feel like, but I just really like to talk about books that I haven't read yet that I'm really excited for. As much as I like to talk about books that I have read and recommend to you guys, I also just, I don't know, there's something about the excitement of the anticipation of a book where I don't know if I'm going to like it or not like it, but it sounds really good. So I really enjoy doing videos about books that I haven't read yet. I know not all of you enjoy watching them, but I feel like I do an even mix of them, and a lot of you do enjoy watching them, so hopefully you like this one too. I just thought it would be fun to talk about some books that I've kind of been putting off for a lot of the year. That's what a lot of these books are, but fingers crossed I will be able to make a dent into this list. I definitely won't be able to get to all of them probably, even though my reading has been going really well. I've been able to read a lot. It still is a hefty list here of a lot of big books. So without further ado, let's just get into it. There's not really rhyme or reason to me grabbing off this pile. I'm just going to grab whatever I pick up. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Lady Rogue by Jen Bennett. I may have actually already read this by the time you see this video because it has been on my radar recently. I included it in my October TBR because I think it is going to be kind of October-esque. I'm not sure exactly how October themed it will be, but the fact that it's about a treasure hunter, it's a fantasy, and it's about a treasure hunter's daughter who her father ends up going missing, and she goes to try and find him, and they discover that the treasure that he was hunting for was a ring that used to belong to Vlad the Impaler. So just the whole Dracula thing definitely makes me think of the Halloween season, and I have read a lot of Jen Bennett this year. I have read 3 of her books this year that I haven't read yet, so I've read pretty much all of her stuff now except for she has a book that's coming out in November, and then I think she has one more book that came out last year that I haven't gotten the chance to get to yet. But other than that, I have read all of them except for this one, obviously, but all of her other books are contemporaries, so this is definitely not a contemporary, it is a fantasy, and I'm very intrigued to see what her writing is going to be like in a fantastical setting. One of my favorite things about her contemporaries is that she gives her characters very interesting hobbies, so I'm not sure how that's going to translate into a story like this. I'm expecting there to definitely be a romance, and I love the idea of treasure hunting too, so I think this is going to be something that I will really like, hopefully. Next up is, of course, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I've been talking about this book and wanting to read it for so long. It came out last year and I had started it, and I for sure am hoping to read this in October. So this shouldn't be on this list for too long. I'm definitely going to at least try it, and if it doesn't work out, then that's gonna be it for me. But I definitely want to give it a chance. It's about Yale and secret societies, and Leigh Bardugo is one of my favorite authors, but this is very different for her because it's more of a paranormal sort of story, and it's an adult fiction, so we'll see. Next up is Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. This is the sequel to Skyward, which I read when it first came out and really enjoyed, and this came out last year around Christmas time, and I have put it off all year long. I started it at one point, like I do actually still have my place. I got to page 29 and then I put it down for some reason, I can't exactly remember why, but but I so want to read this because I enjoyed Skyward so much, and I've had the sequel for such a long time that it seems ridiculous that I haven't read it yet. Also, there are more books. I think it's going to be a quartet, but there is a break this year, so there's no new book coming out this year, so I have time to catch up before the next sequel comes out. So I need to take advantage of that and just read this dang book, because I remember when I started it, I was really liking it, and I was liking being back with the characters and the snarkiness of it, and it reminded me why I enjoyed the first book so much in the first place. So like, I just need to get to it and suck it up. This next book isn't exactly a sequel, but it's kind of a sequel in a way. It's a prequel, but that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I want to read this because I feel like it was one of the most anticipated books of 2020, and I've been avoiding any and all opinions, so please don't give me your opinion on it. I want to go into it not really having many expectations, but it is a prequel to the Hunger Games series, so obviously that's going to make a lot of buzz. I feel like it kind of seems like it went under the radar a little bit because it came out around when COVID started, so that's kind of like screaming into a void, trying to get your book, you know, out there and for people to remember that it's coming out, because there was just so much happening. So this kind of flew a bit under the radar, surprisingly, but I do still feel like it was very hyped up, and I want to know if it lived up to all that hype, if it was worth the wait. I'm super skeptical, not really sure what to expect from it. It is the backstory to President Snow, and I love a villain backstory, so that definitely is going in my favor, but I don't really know if I'm going to like this, because I'm just so skeptical when series end and then they add on to them. It generally hasn't worked out on in my favor, but those usually have been sequels. So the fact that this is a prequel makes me a little bit more optimistic, but I'm definitely still very cautious. Next is Punching the Air by Ibi Zoboi and Yusef Salaam. So this actually came out pretty recently, so I feel like it's okay that I haven't read it yet, but I have read a lot of novels in verse this year, and this is also a novel in verse, and I have discovered that that's really a format that I enjoy a lot. So I would really like to get to this one because I think it's going to be super powerful. It's all about a boy who is wrongly accused of a crime and ends up in prison because of that. And he is telling his story through verse. And there's also, like, there were some illustrations in here too, which just, I love when a book has illustrations, as you guys know. I can't really find any right now, but I swear that I did see some. Yeah, there we go. So there are some like little illustrations that add to the story there, but I really love Ibi Zoboi. I've loved every book that I have read by her so far, and I am very intrigued by this collaboration because Yusef Salaam is of the Exonerated Five, so it's a fictional story, but it is something that he can relate to because he was wrongly accused of a crime and went to jail because of that. I'm expecting big things from this book, so I'm hoping it lives up to it, and I should for sure be able to get to this one by the end of the year because as it is a novel in verse, it shouldn't take me too long to read. Next up is Unbirthday by Liz Braswell. So this is a Twisted Tale book. As you guys know, I have a lot of them and I'm planning on doing a readathon. I think I'm going to do it at the end of November is when I figured out, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll probably let you guys know on Instagram when I'm doing it, but like, I'm not really going to do it as a formal readathon. I'm just going to kind of be like, oh, I'm reading the Twisted Tales now. Sorry, my battery was about to die, so if the angle is different or anything, that's why. But getting back to this, so if I don't end up being able to do that readathon, then I'm going to save most of the Twisted Tales that I have for next year, but I would still like to try and get to this one because I was so excited for it. It is an Alice in Wonderland retelling, and that obviously is a thumbs up in my book, so I'm hoping it's going to be good. I'm like a little scared that I won't like it, but I feel like I probably will. It's just I have high expectations, so that makes me a bit nervous. Next up is Invictus by Ryan Graudin. I have read pretty much all of Ryan Graudin's books by now. She has one that I'm not sure if it was self-published, but I have read The Walled City and the Wolf by Wolf duology, and this one seems very intriguing to me because it's like a Doctor Who sort of thing. It's a twisted time travel story. We are having a lot of struggles today. Now my memory card was full, but now we should be good because I deleted a bunch of stuff. I really need to reformat it, but I've been too lazy. Anyways, I kind of struggle with sci-fi, but I've enjoyed all the stuff that I've read by Ryan Graudin so far, and I definitely obviously really enjoyed Wolf by Wolf, and this one just seems like such a unique concept, which is one of my favorite things about her, is that she writes really unique books. So I think that this one is definitely going to be very unique, because it's like during a routine heist on the sinking Titanic, Farr meets a mysterious girl named Elliot, who always seems to be one step ahead of him. So it's about Faraway, which is the name of the main character, who is the son of a time traveler from 2003, do you say 2354 AD? I don't know, but you get what I mean, and a gladiator living in ancient Rome. Farr's very existence defies the laws of nature. So he's basically going and exploring history, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Passenger by Alexandra Bracken, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, but if this can do it in like a good way, I think I would really like it. The other one that it reminds me of actually is The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heelig, which I also had some issues with, but I feel like Ryan Graudin does a really good job with the unique concepts, so I kind of have a little bit of faith in her to do it well, but definitely thinking of that, I'm a little bit nervous. Next up is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. So this is another book that came out recently, so I feel like it's fine that I haven't read it yet. I have been kind of gravitating towards fantasy recently, ever since I read House of Salt and Sorrows, and then I read Cinderella is Dead, and I liked both of them a lot. So the only fantasies that I've read so far this year have been retellings, but I definitely want to try some other books. So this is an urban fantasy, so it's more of a lower fantasy because it's partially in reality, and it's with the secret society of like these monsters. So the main character ends up going to this program at a college. She's a high school student, but she goes there and it's like a stay away program, and she ends up witnessing this magical thing happening. So honestly, I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. I know it seems like a mix of like monsters and fantastical creatures and secret societies, which seems very interesting. I have been seeing this book everywhere. I've heard nothing but great things about it. I've heard it's really good for fans of City of Bones, so I am intrigued to see what it has to offer and why everyone's talking about it. I will probably almost definitely have this on my November TBR, so this will definitely overlap with this video. So sorry about that, but I definitely want to read it. Speaking of fantasies, next is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I don't know if this will happen. I would really like it to, but I also don't want to rush myself with it. I think what I might do for this one is start off with the audiobook and then actually physically read it, or listen to the audiobook while following along with the story, because I've heard that in the beginning the world building is a lot, and as I am easing myself back into fantasy, I don't know that a book with like a lot of world building that's kind of complicated in the beginning is going to be for me. However, I also really want to read this. It's Sarah J. Maas's first official adult fantasy, so I am intrigued. I haven't really heard that much about it, but once again, I feel like I haven't really heard that much about a lot of books this year because COVID kind of took over everything. But I know that what I have seen were some really good reviews, and really the only critique that I've heard is that the beginning's very hard to get into because there's a lot of world building. So we'll see how it goes. I think both of my sisters have read this actually, and I can't remember if they liked it, but I think they did. Sorry if you can hear Charlie chewing his bone. He's having a blast. It also would be super if I could get to Kingdom of Ash this year, because I still haven't read the final book in the Throne of Glass series, but I think that will probably be a project for 2021. Next is A Song of Wraiths and Rune by Rosanne A. Brown. So getting back into fantasy, I think this would be a great one to try out. This is a West African inspired fantasy, and I've heard amazing things about it. This cover is so beautiful, and I feel like it might be a great one to try and get to before the end of the year, because one, it came out this year, and two, I've heard some great things, and I'm trying to read some fantasies that have great reviews, because I feel like one wrong move, one bad fantasy, and my getting back into fantasy could all fall apart. So fingers crossed that this one will be a good one. Next is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. travel, so super briefly gonna talk about this. I have had this book for a very long time and I've tried to read it so many times in like all the different ways. I've tried audio, I've tried physically reading it, and I keep on saying I'm going to give it one last chance, and I think what I'm going to do is a reading vlog where I give like popular books one last chance. I think it was Riley Marie who I saw do something like that, and I thought it seemed like a great idea, so this will definitely be one that will be on that list. I'm not sure if that reading vlog will be during Bookmas, because I might incorporate reading vlogs into Bookmas as like reading books that were on like a bunch of TBRs in the year, or like reading a sequel that I put off forever, or those sorts of things, like themed ones. I'm not sure yet, but either way, I am planning on getting to this before the end of 2020. Next is The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. So I have read a ton of historical fiction this year. I've really gotten back into that genre, and this is a historical fiction that I've very much wanted to get to. So it's set in 1992, I believe. Yes, I can never remember if it's 1992 or 1991, but it's set in LA in 1992 during the Rodney King riots. So I think that is a very prevalent part of history that this will educate me a little bit more about. I'm not exactly sure about that exact time period, but I know that Nick Stone said it's required reading, so that definitely means that it is required reading for me. Next is another book that I kind of want to give one last shot, and that is The Light Between Worlds by Laura E. Weymouth. So this is like a Narnia sort of story. It's basically like if the characters came back from Narnia and you're hearing about what happens afterwards, which is a super interesting concept to me. So there's this fantastical world called the Woodlands that they go off to, and then they come back and they are in London during World War II. I believe it's during. So definitely seems like a really interesting setup for a story. I think I'm probably going to listen to the audiobook because there are like large portions of this that are written in italics, and I of course can't find any right now. Yeah, so there are large portions written in italics, which I believe are the parts from before when they were in the Woodlands, and that just like kind of hurts my eyes. I feel like I read that really slowly when I'm physically reading a book. I don't know if that makes sense, but for that reason, audiobook I think will be the route for me to go with this one. But I've had it for a long time, so hopefully I can get to it. And finally is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. I've included this on quite a few TBRs, but now I have the sequel slash companion novel. It's probably a companion, I'm guessing, because it's a romance book, but I've heard such amazing things. It's blurred by Christina Lauren, whom I love, and I feel like I haven't really read adult romances recently, so maybe this will be a good one to end the year off with. So those are really just some of the books that I'm hoping to read before the end of 2020. If I can keep up my reading momentum, I should be able to make a fair dent in these, but we shall see, because I know there's some other things that I have to read, and I've got some other stuff to do, and Bookmas tends to take over a little bit, but I have been doing a pretty good job of balancing and like getting in reading time right now, so if I can keep that up, I should be good. But please let me know what books you are hoping to read by the end of the year, or if you have read any of these, your thoughts on them, so then I can choose which ones to prioritize. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video soon. Thank you very much for watching. I said that in the wrong order, but goodbye.